Hello! Today we will tell you about how even those responsible for maintaining order often end up violating it themselves, receiving harsh punishments as a result. Eric the Vulcaner is a former police officer from Kansas City who was arrested for the murder of an innocent man named Cameron Lamb. On the day of the incident, Cameron had a row with his girlfriend, which escalated into almost a fight, and she left the house in her car. Cameron followed her in his pickup truck. At the same time, the police were investigating an accident, and from the helicopter, officers noticed a red pickup truck chasing a purple Ford Mustang. Eric and his partner Troy Schwamm were nearby and followed Cameron's pickup. They soon saw him parking it in his garage at home. Detectives, who were members of the department dealing with violent crimes and their prevention, entered the private property without permission or a warrant. Both men were in plain clothes, except for police vests thrown over them. As they entered Cameron's yard, they didn't even identify themselves. Vulcaner pointed his service weapon at Roberta Merritt, who lived with Cameron. Afterward, he ordered Lamb to turn off the engine and get out of the pickup. Before the man could comprehend what was happening, Eric yelled that he had a gun and fired 4 shots in rapid succession. The shooting occurred within 9 seconds of the detectives arriving in the yard in front of Lamb's house. Eric was found guilty and sentenced to 3 years in prison. Cameron's stepfather, in a statement to journalists, said he hoped that the prison sentence would make police officers think twice about abusing their authority. Next on the list of wrongdoers is Michael Dotro. He was a police officer in Edison, New Jersey. He committed several crimes, among which conspiracy, arson, and harassment stand out. Let's delve into the details. In 2013, Dotro had disagreements with a superior officer and eventually he set the enemy's house on fire. At the time of the crime, the officer's family, including 2 young children, was inside the house. Luckily, everyone was promptly evacuated and no one was harmed. But that's not the only sin of Dotro. Michael attempted to burn down another police officer's home, who he saw as his rival. In addition to the arson, Dotro was also charged with conspiring to commit an official misconduct. It turned out that the police officer used police resources to gain access to information about individuals involved in a legal proceeding against him. In his already troubled situation, Dotro worsened matters further by harassing his former girlfriend by filing false police reports about her. He used his position as a police officer to intimidate the woman and even placed a tracker on her car to know her whereabouts. Michael was charged with stalking, falsifying a police report, and theft of a computer. In 2017, Dotro pleaded guilty to arson with the understanding that in exchange for his guilty plea on 1 count, prosecutors would drop the other charges. As a result, Dotro was sentenced to 20 years in prison without the possibility of parole for at least 17 years. Sergeant Wayne Jenkins. Sergeant Wayne Jenkins and other members of the elite unit known as the Gun Chase Task Force are considered some of the most corrupt police officers in Baltimore's history. Jenkins was the head of this unit, and under his leadership, instead of removing legal firearms from the streets, they stole equipment from drug dealers, planted false evidence, and then resold it. In January 2018, the 37-year-old leader Jenkins pleaded guilty to charges of robbery, racketeering, and civil rights violations related to planting illegal substances on 2 men back in 2010. Federal Judge Catherine C. Blake sentenced him to 25 years in federal prison, stating that the police officer poisoned society instead of protecting it. During the sentencing, Jenkins cried, apologized, and said, "I am deeply sorry, Your Honor, and sorry to the citizens of Baltimore. I know it's my fault. I know I must be punished for the crimes I committed." Jenkins also separately apologized to the family of Albert Davis, a man who died in a car chase initiated by Jenkins and 2 other officers. Later, it was revealed that the illegal substances were planted in the car to justify the police chase, which should not have happened in the first place. Other members of the task force were also convicted on federal charges. Roy Oliver was a police officer in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, Texas. He frequently abused his authority, but one particular incident on May 5, 2017 drew attention. On that day, Oliver responded to a 911 call, reporting a party with around 100 people, including several underage teenagers, walking in the street while intoxicated. Upon arrival, officers allegedly heard gunshots that caused panic among the crowd. Afterward, Roy fired 3 shots into a passing car and hit 15-year-old African-American Jordan Edwards, who was sitting in the front passenger seat. The boy died in the shooting, and 2 of his brothers and friends were injured. In his defense, Roy claimed that the car with the teenagers was aggressively backing up towards the police vehicle. However, after reviewing the footage from the body camera, Police Chief Jonathan Haber found that the car was actually moving away from the officers. As a result of this incident, Oliver was immediately placed on administrative leave and later fired from the police force. Chief Haber stated in a statement that Roy Oliver's behavior did not align with the core values of the police department. In May 2017, the Dallas County District Attorney's Office charged Oliver. An arrest warrant was issued, but later he was released on a $300,000 bond. His trial was postponed twice, and only in August 2018 he was found guilty of the murder of Jordan Edwards and sentenced to 15 years in prison without the possibility of parole until 2026. 20 years ago, an American prosecutor called former police officer Joseph Medzanovski the most corrupt cop in Chicago. Now 69 years old, he's still behind bars. It all started quite beautifully. During his 22 years of service in the police force, Joseph proved himself to be a true professional and received 59 awards for valor and bravery. He was considered a hero and publicly praised for the staggering number of drug and firearm-related arrests. However, neither his unit nor the city's residents suspected that while they revered this seemingly brave man, he was without a hint of conscience revealing the identities of his undercover colleagues to crime bosses, protecting illegal organizations and supplying gang members with ammunition and prohibited substances. Later, it was revealed that throughout his professional career, the police officer had been associated with various gang members and other corrupt cops. In 2001, he was convicted for selling illegal substances and ratting out undercover officers to gang members. His wife and 2 children were present during the court proceedings and were shocked by the turn of events. Joseph had always appeared to be an upright person and a role model. 4 other criminals involved in Joseph Medzanovski's illegal activities were also convicted. While on trial, the former police officer demanded leniency in accordance with the law signed by then-President Donald Trump back in 2018. However, a federal judge denied his request, stating that the man led a double life and managed to deceive even those closest to him. Although his lawyers claimed that he simply used unorthodox methods to investigate street gangs and was in fact a conscientious officer, Joseph was sentenced to life imprisonment. Zachary Wester was a former deputy sheriff in Jackson County, Florida. For a long time, no one paid attention to him. He seemed like an ordinary employee doing his job. However, in 2018, suspicious behavior led to an investigation. The Jackson County prosecutor noticed irregularities in one of the cases brought to court and sought assistance from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. After some observation, the investigation revealed that the deputy sheriff had been abusing his authority for several years. Eventually, he was arrested and convicted on numerous charges. According to the investigation, Wester routinely conducted illegal searches of vehicles during traffic stops and planted drugs or other contraband on motorists. He would then arrest them on false charges. At times, Wester went further and stole money and other valuable items from innocent citizens' vehicles. Based on what was known to the police, Zachary wrongfully arrested motorists in at least 12 cases. There was also a case where Wester arrested a man after finding syringes in his truck, but there was no indication of drugs. Wester was dismissed from his position as a deputy sheriff, and in July 2020 he was arrested and charged with multiple crimes, including racketeering, official misconduct, fabricating false evidence, and drug possession. For his lengthy list of crimes, he was sentenced to 12 years in prison, and the judge ordered him to pay restitution to all the victims. Derek Stafford is a former deputy marshal in Marksville who was involved in a terrible crime. But let's start from the beginning. It all began on the night of November 3, 2015, when officers Derek Stafford and Norris Greenhouse attempted to stop a vehicle driven by Christopher Few. Jeremy Mardis, Christopher Few's son, was sitting in the front passenger seat. After Christopher Few and his girlfriend Megan Dixon had an argument at a bar, they drove home in separate cars. She reported that she saw Few drive by, followed by 2 officers in a police car. Stafford and Greenhouse activated their flashing lights, but Christopher Few still didn't stop. The car chase continued for a while, until Few ended up trapped on a street near the entrance to the Marksville State Historic Site. The officers fired 18 rounds into the car. As a result, Christopher Hugh's 2-year-old son Jeremy died, and the entire incident was recorded on a body-worn police camera. Shortly after that, an investigation into the incident began. The case was taken up by Judge William Bennett of the Louisiana District Court. During the trial, Stafford and Greenhouse remained under house arrest until the jurors found them guilty. Stafford, whose shots killed the child, was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Greenhouse was found guilty of negligent homicide and sentenced to 7 years in prison. Wayne Casens is a former London police officer. Having worked in law enforcement, he stood out among everyone we talked about today. Now we'll tell you why. For nearly 10 years, Wayne was a member of the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Team. However, he used his authority not to make life in the city safer, but to commit terrible crimes against vulnerable women. In March 2021, Casens was convicted of kidnapping, sexual assault, and the murder of Sarah Everett. The kidnapping occurred late at night when Everett was walking home from a friend's house in South London. Later, the police found her in a forest in Kent. After some investigation, Casens was arrested. During the trial, which took place in September and October 2021, the former police officer pleaded guilty to all 3 charges against him. Moreover, he detailed in court how he used his police training and equipment, including handcuffs and his police identification, to abduct Everett. He also admitted to raping and subsequently killing the girl, showing no remorse or shedding a tear. Wayne was sentenced to life imprisonment. Law enforcement officers are individuals who remain true to their oath and never shy away from risking their lives in the fight against crime. However, some do choose the path of corruption, and what's worse, they knowingly harm the very people they promise to protect. Fortunately, these are just exceptions to the rule. That's all for now. Wishing everyone a good mood and see you in the next video.